Husband's been secretly sneaking out late at night to meet a woman he met online, and I only caught it because the door in our hallway makes a noise like a tired violin when it closes if you don't lift and lean, the kind of noise you can ignore in the day, but at 2:11 a.m. when the apartment is listening to itself breathe, it's the loudest confession in the world, and I sat bolt upright in bed and tasted copper in my mouth and oh right, I should tell you who I am before I start handing you the pieces of this puzzle like I'm emptying my pockets into your palms. I'm Nora, I'm 34, and I'm a night shift nurse in an ER, which means I know the weight of minutes when they thicken. I know what it looks like when someone lies with their eyes because their mouth is busy saying I'm fine, and I know that 2:11 a.m. is when the quiet isn't quiet at all, it's a siren with manners. The violin door sang, and my brain did that tiny arson it does when alarm meets memory. I lay there, telling myself it was the heat kicking in, the cat somewhere being dramatic about dust, or the neighbor in 3B, he is forever discovering gravity after midnight. But I also knew the footprints of our hallway, and my body had already counted them: step, sigh, pause, the hitch where he thinks he's being careful. You learn a person's choreography by living near their sleeping. Max, my husband, the good man with careful hands, has a way of leaving like he's about to wake me and then decides to let me keep dreaming. That night he decided I was an audience he could skip. The lock turned like a secret unbraiding itself. The click wasn't loud, but inside my head it was a door slamming on a chapel. I lay there and didn't do anything heroic. I didn't leap up and fling the door open and hurl a monologue down the stairwell. I listened to the silence return with its pockets turned out. I watched the digital clock blink its little green eyelids at me, and I told myself a nurse's prayer, which is really just a promise to stay present, breathe, observe, chart. And then I got out of bed and walked barefoot to the living room and saw that the mug he always leaves by the sink when he's being tender wasn't there, and the sweatshirt with the thumb holes he wears when he wants to seem harmless was missing from the hook. People think discovery is a moment. It's not. It's a long hallway with the same paintings on both sides, and each step you take they tilt a little more until you realize you've been walking through a crooked museum. The first painting was his phone face down, like it had fainted from an attack of decency. The second was the laptop open to a blank document, cursor blinking like a metronome for a song no one wrote. The third was the router log. I didn't know I knew how to check the router log until my hands went there. I guess this is the part where I confess that night shift nurses often have one other skill: we are traffic controllers. We know what is coming by the hum of the floor. I typed in the IP like a person who has done this before, clicked a thing I didn't recognize yesterday, and there it was: 158.201.205, pings from a rideshare app, a dating forum I thought died in 2014, and a username that felt like a Dare Holostar. There's a particular vertigo when your life uses fonts you don't use. I stared and thought, of course, if you're going to be unfaithful, pick a name that already sounds like a bruise. I'm not proud of what I did next. I took his iPad, which he never bothered to lock because he is a trusting person in the way a person might be trusting right before they meet the ocean for the first time, and I watched the blue dots move across the city map like a procession. The dot labeled Max, he never renamed it, he is that man, was headed to a part of town we only visit to buy used books and pretend we're people who collect classical records. The other dot, the one you get when two devices tell each other the truth, wasn't labeled, but the little thumbnail in the corner was a street lamp and a pair of sneakers, and the caption under a photo I didn't ask to see: "Midnight walks make me feel less like a ghost." My stomach did something cruel, and I hated it for being poetic. "Here's the sentence you expect," I followed him. I didn't. I'm the person people hand their bodies to when they've been shredded by a bad idea. I know better than to run toward traffic. I sat on the couch and tucked my feet under me and pretended to be furniture while the clock tucked each minute into a drawer where I would find it later. I texted my friend Quinn, who is the kind of friend who once brought a full tomato plant to my apartment because I said I needed something alive that didn't ask for a lot. I wrote, "Are you awake? My house just did a noise and I think my life is cheating." She replied in 7 seconds because she's awake more than she isn't. "I'm coming. Put water on. Don't open any apps that start with Y." He came back at 3:28. The door did the violin again, and I stood in the kitchen pretending to pour tea like I was doing something normal at a time normal should be sleeping. He froze in the doorway like he'd walked into a movie where the scene had changed while he was outside. "Hey," he said, "too light?" Couldn't sleep. Went for a walk. The sentence was true in all the wrong places. I said, "Want tea because I am my mother's daughter and we boil water before we boil people." He said, "Sure," in the way you say sure to dentist, and we did the dance where you pass the honey and avoid the other's eyes. I asked in the voice I use when a patient is describing their pain to me and I need them to be specific, "Who's Hollow Star?" His face did that thing where every muscle files for time off at once. He blinked and then looked down like the answer might be written on his palms. "Nora," he said, and his voice was exhausted with itself. "It's just someone from a forum, music, late-night playlist swaps, the insomnia crowd." I wanted my mouth to do something theatrical and biting. It did the nurse thing again and asked for data. "And you met her at 3 in the morning because?" He swallowed, throat working like he had swallowed a stone. "Because she couldn't sleep either," he said, and it was so simple and so cruel I almost admired it. Quinn buzzed and I let her in. She looked at Max once, then at me, then did what she always does. She set a plate on the table like it was a shield. "We're not fighting in an empty kitchen," she said. "We're eating toast and then telling the truth." Max sat, grateful and appalled. I sat because gravity is rude. Quinn cut the toast into triangles like we were 5 and our lives were a lunchbox that needed managing. No one ate. "I'm not sleeping with her," he said suddenly, as if the sentence could outrun what it meant. I stared at his mouth and thought about how many times I have asked a patient on a scale of 1 to 10 how bad is it and how often they say 5 because 5 sounds brave but manageable. "Okay," I said, because I don't interrogate for sport. "What are you doing at 2 a.m.? He rubbed his eyes. "Walking. Talking. Sitting on the stupid river wall and complaining about how everybody expects us to be fine." "Who is us?" I asked, and his mouth made a shape like he had almost said we and then remembered I can see. "There are people who want to hear the blow-by-blow of the next hour, like a car crash retold from 12 angles. I'm not going to do that to either of us. I'll give you the parts that matter." He met her in a late-night forum meant to keep people from disappearing into their own heads. They started messaging because she posted a photo of a vending machine that sold the wrong soda and he wrote a joke I recognized because I mirrored it. It turned into DMs and then voice calls because apparently hearing someone say "me too" at 2 in the morning is more intoxicating than the same sentence in daylight. The first night he left the house he told himself he was just going to see if the city was real. The second night he told himself he was being kind. The third night he didn't tell himself anything because explaining to yourself ruins the magic. "Why didn't you wake me up?" I said, and I hated the way my voice hit that last word like it had fallen from a height. He looked at me like I had asked him to perform surgery with mittens. "Because you work so hard," he said, and it made me laugh ugly and wide. "Because I work so hard, you went and built a swing set in a park I don't know." He flinched. "Because I didn't want to make it a thing," he said. "It is a thing," I said, and this time my voice wasn't a nurse, it was a sister of a nurse who has seen too many people die of "it's probably fine." Quinn didn't say much, which is her superpower. She put another plate on the table like the antidote was carbohydrates and silence. After he went to the shower, because there's always a shower in these nights like a curtain call, she squeezed my arm. "What do you want right this second?" "The truth already happened," I said. "I want parameters." She nodded. "Then write them," she said, and pulled a receipt out of her pocket and gave me a pen because she carries pens like some people carry pepper spray. I wrote like a person writing discharge orders for her own heart. No more sneaking out. No contact with her while we decide if we are a we. Full access to devices for a defined time, not because I'm his warden but because trust is a bone and we just heard it crack. Therapy today, not next Thursday. A meeting with me at 1 a.m. 3 nights a week for a month, a date with the hour he gave away, where we sit on the river wall and say the sentences that made him put on shoes at 2:11. He read it when he came out smelling like eucalyptus and lost. He nodded. "I can do all of that," he said. "You will," I said, and my bones stopped vibrating. He texted her from our kitchen with me watching him, not because I need to watch but because he has proved his bad at telling himself no. He wrote, "I can't do this. I've hurt my wife. I won't meet or talk anymore." She replied again in 10 minutes. That took a year off my life. I understand. I won't reach out. Take care of yourself. I expected to hate her. I didn't. How do you hate a person you know only as a time of night and a username that already named their emptiness? You think that's the end of the bad, but it never is. There were aftershocks. 2 nights later I woke up at 1:14 convinced the world had ended because the light under the door looked wrong. It was just the hallway bulb burning out, but I sat in the bed learning the grammar of panic. He had left his phone in the living room to charge and I sat beside it like a dog guarding something fragile and ridiculous. When the first therapy appointment happened, he sat on the edge of the couch with his hands clasped as if prayer were a posture you eventually learn if you pretend enough. The therapist, her name is Jory and her office has a rug that looks like a geography lesson, asked us the question that made everything both worse and better. When did the night become a place you went separately? Max said, when Nora started needing sleep more than talks, and I said, when Max started wanting to be interesting for a stranger, and then we sat there inside the honest room we'd made and felt the walls agree to hold. There were practicalities I won't romance for you because the boring parts are what saved us. Phones sleep in the bowl by the door at 9. On my nights off, we go walking for 20 minutes at the hour he used to leave me to love the city in secret. We named where it hurts like you name a muscle. He wrote a list called Don't Go Out to Find This and it says things like attention, novelty, the relief of not being the person who knows where the extra napkins are. I wrote a list called Ask Me for This that says things like ask me to listen like a stranger, ask me for a third place, ask me to watch you try something and not make it a test. I'll tell you my favorite ugly moment, because it's the one that bent the needle back toward hope. 3 weeks in, I found a draft in his notes app, a non-sent message to her from before the cutoff that said, tonight the vending machines are out of ginger ale, and my breath made a bad noise because that was their origin story, soda machines and insomnia. I brought it to him and I said, this is a ghost, and he didn't defend. He said, delete it, and he did, and then he cried the way men cry when they thought they were saving someone and realized the only person they were trying to save was themselves. I put my hand on the back of his neck, that place that feels like a hinge, and I said, if you want ginger ale, wake me up. I'll hate you a little and love you a lot. We met the night on purpose after that. That sounds like a pretty sentence, it wasn't. It was us on the river wall at 1:03, shivering a little, him confessing that sometimes he walks because he's scared has already had the best conversation of his life, me confessing that sometimes I go to sleep because if I stay up I'll start counting the wrong things and never stop. We learned how to hold each other's tired without making it an emergency or a performance. We learned to say, I am not okay, but I don't need you to fix me. Just hold a corner of the blanket. He told his sister. I told my mother, who said men are too soft for the internet, and then brought lasagna as if carbs could pad the fall. He sent a message in the forum where they met saying he needed to log off for a long while, and a dozen strangers said, good for you, which sounds corny until it's a rope. He blocked her username and then told me where the temptation was hiding, not because I wanted to be a cop but because I wanted to see where the holes in our fence were. He took the long way around the nights for a while, like a person walking past a bar where they used to be the best version of themselves to people who didn't know where they put their keys. You want to know if I forgave him? Forgiveness is a verb that keeps asking for ID. Some days I stamped his passport with a smile because he told me the hard thing before I had to overhear it. Some days I told him to go sleep on the couch because my body couldn't keep being polite to his damage. Most days we looked at each other like people who almost didn't make it home, which is both melodramatic and accurate. There was one night, the worst maybe, when he confessed he missed the way the river sounded when he knew he was doing wrong and did it anyway. I got up, put on shoes and said, come on, and we went to the river and sat and said nothing and let the water remind him that it's just water without an audience. He held my hand so tight my fingers complained. He said, I don't think I want to be a secret anymore, and I said, then don't be. I carry exactly one souvenir from all of this, a sticky note on the inside of our front door that says, are you sneaking out or stepping out? Because sneaking out is for people practicing absence and stepping out is for taking the trash and buying milk and going for a walk with your wife at 1:03 because she decided to meet your darkness in person. He rolls his eyes at it sometimes. I do too. It's a corny little sign. Corny little signs keep people from walking out of their lives while their bodies are still home. The other day, on a shift so long the clocks flirted with treason, I watched a patient wake up from sedation and whisper, "Did anyone stay?" And I said yes, and their face did that thing faces do when doors open. I came home smelling like hospital and ribs and the kind of tired only soft lamps can cure, and Max was waiting with ginger ale in a glass with ice he'd smashed with the back of a spoon because he didn't know the right size cubes and the small violence made him feel useful. We sat on the couch. He said, "How was it?" I said, "A lot," and he said, "Do you want to talk or look at nothing?" And I said, "Nothing," and we looked at nothing together for 10 minutes and then at each other and then at the sticky note on the door, and I thought, not with triumph but with the bone-deep relief of a person who has finally named a hallway. Tonight we are stepping. Sometimes I wake at 2:11 out of muscle memory and the violin door stays quiet and my chest still does its little protest and he wakes up, not all the way, just enough to put a hand on my hip and say, "Hey," in the voice you use with cats and new babies. And I remember that nights are not enemies, they're rooms and we can decorate them or we can run, and for now we put a plant in there and a chair and 2 mugs and a promise we keep making plain. If you're going to leave the bed, take me with you. Or leave me a map that starts with my name. He's learning to draw. I'm learning to point. We're making something that looks a lot like morning.